live, George.
We are live, Justin.
We're live. There it is.
Doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. So today we're going to be talking about Goosebumps by, who's up Goosebumps by again, Justin?
R to the L to the Stine.
R.L. Stine. Do you remember what the R and L stand for?
I do not. Do you?
I don't off the top of my head. This should be something that we should look up. But everyone has been familiar with R.L. Stine. His first Goosebumps book was Welcome to the Dead House. It was published in 1992, I believe.
That sounds right. Yep.
So we...
and George, is this a book that you remember from your childhood? Or
I
no?
actually do. I actually had the box set of this book and some other books.
Excellent.
It's one of the situations where, as I reread it, there were just some aspects of it that kept popping up that I remembered here and there, but I didn't remember the entire plot. So it's good to revisit it.
Cool.
How about you, Justin? Did you read this one?
No, I do not think that I really read any Goosebumps books when I was a kid. I read a lot of Fear Street books, but didn't really dip into the Goosebumps. So this was a fresh one for me, and a lot of surprises.
A lot of surprises.
Yeah.
So I think if it's correct, what we're going to do is maybe talk just a little bit about overview of the book.
Sure.
And then kind of dig into spoiler territory. So
exactly.
Again, this podcast will contain spoilers for a book that was published in 1992. So hopefully no one gets upset.
Right. If you haven't read it yet, you probably never were going to, but
we'll give you a little bit of time to read it.
Yeah, if you want to pause the podcast right now.
Yeah.
Dig into the book. It should take you not more than a few hours.
Yeah, so
crank through it. So go ahead and do that right now.
Yeah, we'll give you a few moments.
And we're back.
All right. So by now you should have read the book.
Exactly.
All right. So Justin, do you want to start us off with stuff? I see you have some notes on there.
Well, I do have notes. I had a lot of thoughts on the matter. But first, actually, George, I'd like to talk very, very briefly about kind of the elephant in the room, which in my mind is that there are a number of other podcasts going through the Goosebumps series.
Probably, yes.
Oh, there definitely are. I checked. There's at least 3 others.
But I'm only on one of them, so that's why.
The question is, what do we bring to the table that the other Goosebumps podcasts do not? Why should our listeners continue listening instead of exiting out of their podcast program right now and downloading a different Goosebumps podcast?
Because of the smooth sound of my voice.
Exactly. That's all you should need.
That's all you really need, caressing your eardrums.
Exactly right. So that's all you should need is George's soothing voice.
Exactly.
Plus, I think the world needs at least 4 Goosebumps podcasts.
At least.
3 is not enough.
You can't have odd numbers.
At least 4.
You can't have odd
podcasts.
numbers of anything.
So we'll go ahead and venture forth and dig into a little bit of Welcome to the Dead House. Overall, my first take on the book, a pretty good opening salvo from Mr. R.L. Stine. I liked it. It had a lot of, kind of horror story tropes that I enjoyed. Brought out a lot of the classic tropes.
Yes.
So I appreciate that. And then a few kind of new twists. So what about yourself, George?
So this was not my first reading of the book, but it was the first time I read it in probably over 20 years. Again, enjoyable book. R.L. Stine has a habit of the books start a little bit slow, but once you get into them, they just roll really quickly through. Enjoyable. I mean, there's some, again, the standard horror movie tropes that you've seen in different places. I mean, we could probably, if we really wanted to, dig in trope by trope.
Trope by trope.
Consult
one trope at a time.
Like the TV Tropes dude's website, and sort of like pull out what's what. But we'll see what we get into.
We'll go through the tropes.
But again, enjoyable story. Worth your time to pick up. If you have the time, really do go back and check it out.
Did the book give you goosebumps?
No.
Did it give you mouse bumps?
Mouse bumps? No.
Right.
No. The book, I think I've read it already. There's a few sections in there where it was a little bit intense for like a child, maybe back in 1992. But today's children have seen a lot worse.
I wasn't that
TV.
scared reading this book. I still slept with the lights off, in fact. So it didn't really rattle me too much. But anyways, should we jump in?
I think we should jump in. So right now we're going to be getting into spoiler territory.
Yep, spoilers.
So
I will go ahead and get us started here, George, and you just jump in with any thoughts or things do you want to add?
Yes.
So it starts off with a little introduction to our protagonists, Josh and Amanda. Right off the bat, I wasn't a big fan of Josh and Amanda.
Oh, both of them?
Yeah, neither of them.
I mean, that Josh guy was kind of annoying.
And Amanda.
Josh was kind of annoying. Amanda was she was doing her thing,
Yeah. So yeah, first person narrative from Amanda's perspective, and she's got a brother Josh, and they've just arrived at a big spooky house that their family is moving into.
Yeah, yeah.
They're feeling very uneasy about this.
Well, mostly Josh. He's kind of being whiny about it.
Yeah, classic Josh.
Classic Josh.
Typical Josh.
Classic.
Have you ever had to move to a spooky house, George? And what was that like for you?
Well, basically, the first move that I've made in my life, I was too really young to remember, and I lived there until I went to college, so didn't have that sort of issue, And if it was spooky when I first moved there, I probably blocked it out. Can't remember it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if we can bring back those memories,
repressed memories
over the course of this podcast.
Ideally.
So we've got Josh and Amanda. They're not feeling this new house, but a little bit of backstory there. Apparently, their great uncle has died and left them a house in the town of Dark Falls.
So the situation is they got a random letter from a great uncle that they've never heard about before.
Exactly. This to me sounds like a trope.
It sounds like spam to me. Your great uncle Harold, has, passed away and left you a large sum of money. Follow up
in
with
Dark
this.
Falls.
In this place that you've never been to.
Right.
So
they get this letter that they've inherited basically a big house, and the kids I think don't know what to make of it at first, but Dad's loving it.
Yeah,
Dad's very excited. Dad's dancing around the room. What he's planning on doing apparently is quitting his day job and focusing on his writing career, which he feels he can now do because they've inherited a house.
Well, again, another trope. So that the trope count is 2 so far?
We're up to 2.
We should have a little bell or something.
Exactly.
All right.
So this to me strikes me as a little impulsive. So right off the bat, I'm assuming Dad's probably the killer. Like, I don't really know where the story's going. I don't know what this story's actually about, but my suspicion is immediately upon Dad because he seems very impulsive, and I don't trust him.
Well, I mean, he's a writer, so
exactly.
Well, so all right. So they get the thing for a house. They say they're gonna move out there.
They decide to move there.
Toot sweet.
Yep. And so they arrive one day. They pack up their house. They move to the new house right away. The kids aren't feeling it. The dog, Petey, Petey's not feeling it. Petey's very much on edge. Does not like the atmosphere. Does not like the new house.
Doesn't like the vibe.
Doesn't like the vibe. The kids are very sketched out. But they decide to go for like a little tour of the house. Mom, Dad, and Amanda. Josh is like, I can't. I'm not even going in. I'm just gonna wait outside.
He can't even.
He
can't even.
He's gonna wait outside with Petey. So, Amanda goes into the house with Mom and Dad, and Amanda actually she's digging the house. She likes it. It's a giant house. She's feeling it. She's got a big room. She's excited about that. But as she's touring the house, George, she sees a boy in the house, a mysterious figure of a young boy. And with a shock, she realizes it's not Josh.
Yes. So, yeah, again.
And at that moment, my blood ran cold, George.
I'm sure I was scared when I read this over 20 years ago, a little bit, but yeah. I've seen this horror game for a while now, and so.
All right, you know this trope?
I know this trope. What's that? 3. We're at 3 tropes.
At least 3 tropes. So, Amanda's a little rattled, but they leave the house, they walk outside, and Josh is gone. At that moment, George, my blood ran cold again. So Josh is gone, and they need to go find Josh. Josh is nowhere to be found. The dog is nowhere to be found. Petey's gone. So they drive around, and they find him in a cemetery, being chased by something. So Amanda sees him,
or he appears to be chased by something.
He's being chased by something. At that moment, my blood runs cold, and then Amanda gets closer and realizes, oh, it's just the dog. He was chasing the dog around the cemetery.
That's what one does.
But what we do need to do real quick is also introduce another character, Mr. Dawes.
Mr. Dawes. Who is Mr. Dawes?
Can you tell us a little bit more about Mr. Dawes?
So Mr. Dawes was the real estate agent that kind of showed them the house, was introducing them to the area, sort of introducing them to the town. telling them about the town. So he was the first person they really interacted with at the town. One thing they also noted is that Petey, was freaking out at Mr. Dawes as well. So that was one important note.
Yep.
The name of the town was Dark Falls, I believe.
That's right.
Dark Falls. And one thing about the town is that all of the houses within the town had huge trees and were covered in shade and shadow. Apparently it was summertime, but it felt cold by each of the houses and things like that. So
excellent color around Dark Falls.
yes.
It's good to characterize the town, characterize the setting, bring the listeners to the town of Dark Falls.
Welcome.
Along with our protagonists.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, the kids are pretty scared. Amanda's very nervous. She thinks she may have seen a boy in the house. She kind of has a feeling that something's not quite right, something a little ghostly.
The word ghost was never uttered, was it?
No, it was not. Nobody's ever mentioned a ghost. Something spooky though.
Spooky.
She's creeped out.
I'd be spooked if there was a little boy in my house. There's no reason for little boys to be in my house.
No,
at all.
Absolutely not. So also, I think, Mr. Dawes, first name Compton, by the way.
Compton Dawes.
Compton Dawes. Seems like a generally pretty decent guy. I think the kids like him pretty well. And he's helping the family out. So helping them kind of transition into the new house. At that point, they hadn't completely moved out of their old house, had some loose ends to tie up. So basically, the family goes back to their previous house to finish packing, get some more stuff out of there. In the meantime, Amanda connects with some of her good friends, says goodbye to all her friends. She's very upset.
Yeah, I mean,
leaving all her friends behind.
I mean, it's a big move. This is 1992. No Facebook. Internet is, non-existent. You move a few blocks down the street, might as well say goodbye to their friends forever.
Yep, you're never going to see them again.
Yeah, they're moving 4 hours away. So,
yep.
Yeah, this is completely forgotten.
Who's going to come visit you in Dark Falls?
No one. I mean, 4 hours away. I can barely remember friends from Piscataway who I haven't seen in quite some time.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for Facebook, I wouldn't be able to connect with them.
Yeah. So the family, they've got to go back to this big house, this new house. So they pack up the rest of their stuff. They're heading over there, and they get to the house. And as they're arriving, Amanda once again sees a figure in the window.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's the same boy. She's seen the same boy yet again.
Horror trope number 4 or 5.
Yes, and also blood running cold, 4th or 5th time.
Again, she tries to tell her parents about this, and is this up when she tells her parents?
Yeah, she's trying to tell her mom what's going on. Mom is very dismissive.
Yeah,
not taking her seriously at all.
Horror trope number 6.
Yeah, but Amanda, she wants to get to the bottom of this. She decides to investigate through the house. She's creeping around the house, searching for the origin of the noises that she's hearing, and just then a boy creeps up and grabs her by the shoulder.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
but it's Josh.
It's Josh. Josh is just messing around, as brothers do, and things like that.
And then, Amanda's pretty annoyed by her brother, tired of his antics, but they decide to, she tells Josh that she's been seeing some things. And just as she's explaining this to him, they hear a noise in a bedroom, and they're like, "Oh, what is that?" We have to go investigate.
Yep.
And they go to investigate, but it's just an open window.
Yeah, open window, blinds.
Open window making some noise, rattling some doors.
It happens.
No big deal.
From time to time. Actually, just on the side note, they first noticed that because the doors in her room started to move on its own. So, yeah, the house where I grew up, it wasn't uncommon for doors to slam shut when a window was open. So, I mean, you got used to it, just hearing a door slam upstairs. We're the only one in the house, but I could see how that could be unsettling for a child who was unfamiliar with the way that air pressure works.
For sure.
Yes.
At that point, Amanda, still annoyed with Josh, decides to play a trick on him. So she pretends basically that she's like dead or something. She lays down on the bedroom floor and scares the crap out of Josh.
Yeah.
But what this does is it freaks out Josh. Josh goes running to mom and dad. Mom and dad are getting really fed up with the antics of their children.
They just have enough of the shenanigans.
Yeah. So the parents are getting more and more annoyed. They're not interested in hearing any more about Amanda's thoughts about seeing this boy around the house, or her what they call an overactive imagination. Mom and Dad are just like, no,
Another trope.
get out of here. Yeah.
Yes.
And that night, while Amanda's sleeping, she hears some whispering
And giggling.
and giggling. So that's a little unsettling.
Yeah, I'd be unsettled if I heard whispering and giggling while I was trying to sleep. I'm trying to sleep.
Exactly.
You gotta keep down the noise. If you're gonna be watching me while I sleep, don't giggle at me too.
Exactly. Keep it
That'll
down.
That'll make you feel insecure about
Just
yourself.
keep it down while I'm trying to sleep.
Exactly.
So she sees a curtain fluttering as well, and she's like, it's just the window. So she gets up to close the window, but guess what?
What,
the
Justin?
window was closed.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now that could be spooky.
That could be spooky.
Did your blood run cold?
It didn't.
It did not at that point.
At that point, I was just like,
Par for
Amanda
the
and
course?
Josh, you guys are kind of getting on my nerves. I felt I was really relating to Mom and Dad at that point
Why were they getting on your nerves at this point?
because of their shenanigans. Shenanigans.
Yeah, that's just fun to say on mic.
Shenanigans.
Shenanigans.
So then Amanda goes back to sleep. And this, I think, is where it starts to get a bit macabre because she has a spooky dream.
She has this big old spooky dream.
Do you remember the dream, George?
I remember the dream line for line. So it was a dream where she and her family were sitting down to dinner. In the dream, their faces were blurry, and they were eating like rotting looking food. By the time she was able to focus on her family's faces, the faces were sloshing off into sort of showing green skulls underneath.
Yeah.
And at this point, I'm like, this is where it's no longer, acceptable for all children. This is where it gets
a little gruesome.
a little bit gruesome, and they're eating like this rotting flesh, and then her friends come to the door, and she can't really go to get her friend. So this is the part where the R.L. Stine kicks in. It stops being Beverly Cleary and becomes R.L. Stine.
Yep.
Yep.
I was a little creeped out. My blood ran cold. So then Amanda wakes up from her spooky dream, and the curtains are blowing again.
Ooh.
Even though that window was closed. So the next morning, they're trying to explain to their parents what's been going on. Pretty freaked out. After breakfast, Amanda goes upstairs and sees a girl at the top of the stairs. Pretty spooky.
Another person that's not in their family.
So what's
in their
going on
house.
there? I don't know.
I don't know.
Amanda gets to her room to find clothes all over her bed. She hears whispering.
I think at this point, the clothes, she was going to try to go for a walk, and she found clothes laid out for her.
Yeah.
Another time, she actually went up to do stuff and saw clothes all over her bed. That freaked her out a little bit.
Yep. So there's these clothes. The clothes are laying out on her bed, and she doesn't know who put them there. And then she's hearing all this whispering. She just saw a girl. She'd seen this boy a couple times, and at this point, Amanda has a little bit of a breakdown.
Yeah, she's not very happy.
She flips out a little bit. But eventually kind of pulls herself together, and they decide she's going to go for a walk with Josh, primarily because the parents are trying to get rid of him.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is 1992. They just moved to a new place. Their kids are complaining about seeing strangers, and the first thing the parents do is say, why don't you guys go leave into a town you've never been in before and just leave us alone with no way to contact you or call you back when we need to.
Exactly right.
So this is a fantastic parenting.
Fantastic parenting.
Fantastic.
So the kids do go for a walk. On the walk, they run into a kid named Ray. And Amanda recognizes him as the boy from the house. And she's a little freaked out by that.
Well, did she recognize him right away?
Right away.
Right away, she recognized
Immediately.
him.
She's like, she recognizes the kid, and then, so they're talking, and then Ray says that he used to live in that house. So Amanda's like, what's going on with that? What's the deal? Meanwhile, they had their dog with them, Petey. You remember Petey.
Yeah, Petey, the lovable pup.
Petey does not like Ray one bit.
Not one bit. Not a
little aggressive, a lot of barking. Not a fan of Ray. But nevertheless, they decide to be buddies because when you're, that age, you don't have the Facebook.
You don't have the Facebook. You don't have the internet.
You're just friends with whoever is like in front of you.
You don't have the Instagrams or the Tumblrs.
You go for a walk and you find a kid, and you're just like, all right, I guess we're friends.
You're within striking age range of my age. We should be friends for no other reason than the fact that you're here.
That's right.
Yes.
So they're hanging out, talking about the town, and Amanda, here's a line from the book. Amanda says, "It's really dead around here, huh?" And Ray's like, "Yeah, I guess you could say that."
Yeah. Yeah.
So a little foreshadowing for
Just
sure.
a little bit foreshadowing.
Laying on the foreshadowing a little thick.
Well, it's R.L. Stine, and this is a book for children who haven't seen horror books before.
Yep.
So, it's first one.
And they walk to the school, and they get to the school, and they see even more kids, like a gang of kids, a bunch of teens,
A gaggle of teenagers.
a gaggle of teens, and they, meet them and say hello to them. And again, I guess you're trying to be friends with whoever you come across on your walk because you're a kid. What else
Pickings
are you
are
gonna do?
slim.
Yeah.
Pickings are slim.
Not a lot of options.
No.
And you could. I think they could feel that Ray wasn't going to contribute much, so they needed to add to the group a little bit.
Well, I mean, Ray was introducing them to them. They got to meet a few of them. They talked to them. Then, before they realized it, they were pretty much surrounded by the kids.
Yeah,
The kids have few bats and things like that, and
the children were armed.
children
As
were
children
indeed armed.
typically are.
Yeah, at least in 1992. But it's a situation where, what's your name? Amanda's stranger danger sirens were starting to go off a little bit. Right?
Yeah. But she had met the kids and had connected with one in particular named Karen, and she felt like she was going to be good friends with Karen.
Yeah.
But then things kind of got weird.
What was Karen's last name again?
I don't remember.
All right.
Do you remember?
Do I remember Karen's last name? I do not.
It was Ray Thurston or something like that.
Yeah, something odd.
I remember Ray's name.
Something.
But Karen, I don't remember.
Whatever.
Exactly. Whatever. So Amanda and Karen, they think they're going to be friends, but then these kids form the circle around Josh and Amanda and Ray, and they've got bats, and they're acting like very kind of intimidating.
Messy. I mean, whenever people form a circle around me with bats, I feel less than confident.
Yeah, it makes me, I would say, uncomfortable.
Yes, I feel unsure. I don't feel fully fully sure about my situation.
Yep, same here.
I feel uneasy.
I feel
I'm trying
uneasy.
to say.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So then, while the kids are being encircled by these teenagers with bats, they're getting more and more nervous. But who shows up to save the day? Mr. Compton Dawes.
Mr. Dawes shows
Mr.
up and
Compton Dawes saves the day. He breaks it up.
Well, he in a friendly way. He's like, "Where are you guys up to?"
Yeah.
He doesn't start like smacking kids around, things like that, which would have been an interesting turn.
I agree with that. And also, once Compton Dawes shows up and kind of diffuses what was an increasingly tense situation.
Could have been tense.
Amanda is basically like, "Oh, I was probably just imagining things.
Probably.
It wasn't really. They weren't really gonna beat me with bats.
It was
just a misunderstanding."
There's a running theme of Amanda doubting herself, which
I blame her parents for that.
That's probably her parents. Amanda's been pretty astute this entire time, but anytime there's some sort of danger that seems to be present, she doubts herself. It's like, oh.
Yep.
He's like, yeah, all these kids are surrounding me with the bats. It's probably my fault.
Probably just my imagination.
I wasn't nice enough to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Amanda lacks confidence.
Very much
but
so.
in the meantime, little dog Petey again is barking at Compton Dawes. The dog is very agitated.
Agitated doggy.
So the dog feels just a bad energy from the whole crew, from pretty much everybody the dog meets.
Yeah.
He's just not feeling those people.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, after this tense situation of the kids getting encircled by teenagers with bats, they basically, I guess, become friends, and they go to a playground to play baseball
Well,
together.
they were friends. I mean, like they didn't. Other than just
after the misunderstanding,
after the quote unquote misunderstanding, the kids invite them to go play some softball with them. So they were saying, "Oh, do you play softball or hardball or whatever?"
Yeah.
Which I've never really. Have you heard of baseball by children being referred to as hardball?
Hardball, never.
In this day and age?
Never.
No.
Or in any day or age.
Yeah.
I've never heard that.
Yeah. Hardball I only hear in terms of business tycoons and
Exactly.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
They play hardball.
They do. So they go play some softball, I believe, and continue to chat. And Amanda and Karen again become good buddies. And then it's like still like late morning at this point, and it's kind of a cloudy day, and the sun starts to come out, and everybody kind of says, "Oh, I gotta go."
Yeah.
All the kids.
They scatter as soon as it starts to get a little bit sunny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the kids apparently seem to be averse to kind of sunlight, and I think Amanda finds that a little bit suspicious. And as the kids are kind of dispersing, Karen comments to Amanda that Karen used to live in her house.
Ah, yes.
Just as Ray had said the same thing.
Yes. Oh, one thing I just wanted to point at. I mean, the kids were averse to sunlight, which, again, in today's day and age, actually makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
A lot of sense. I mean, but back then doesn't make any sense. They have nothing of value to go to at home.
Yeah, they've got nothing at home.
They don't have the internet. Is what we're talking about.
There's no reason to go home.
No reason to go home ever. So
Wait, they had Netflix though, right?
no Netflix. No Netflix, no internet,
Internet?
no Xboxes, no
No
Instagrams,
Xbox.
no Snappy Chats, no Facebooks,
MySpace?
no MySpace.
Huh.
All they had were books and parents.
Friendster, right?
Possible.
At least Friendster.
Nah, that didn't come out till probably 2000.
So anyways, the kids go home. Amanda's a little spooked out because people keep telling her that they lived in her house. Back at home, she keeps hearing voices. Petey's still irritated. So at home, things are just a little weird.
Yes.
Everybody's on edge.
Yes.
And then one day they're out playing, and stupid dog Petey decides to take off.
As one does.
He runs away.
Mhm.
And the kids are searching for the dog. They get lost. They can't find the dog. The dog is gone. It's a very frustrating situation for the children,
Yes.
but they can't find their dog. The dog's lost.
Yeah.
They lost Petey.
They lost Petey.
Meanwhile, the parents try to help them find the dog unsuccessfully. They don't find the dog. And the parents decide that they're going to go to a party that night.
Yeah, because when you just lose your dog, it's better to keep up appearances with your neighbors than to try to console your children.
Yeah.
So you leave them at home in a new house.
You don't want your friends and neighbors to think there's anything wrong or that your dog is gone.
No,
You got to keep up appearances.
You have to keep up appearances, especially when you're in a new neighborhood. If you go in and let them know you lost your dog, that's what you're going to be known as forever in the neighborhood. Like, oh, there go the Johnsons. They can't keep track of their own dog. Ooh.
Yep.
Don't invite them to your parties. Ooh.
Exactly.
Real downer.
So they decide to go to that party, and they do. They leave the children home alone. The house is still very spooky.
Super spooky.
And Josh comes to Amanda and says, "You know what? I know where Petey is. He's at the cemetery."
Why would she say that?
Well, because Petey had ran to the cemetery, days prior.
Yes,
That's where they had found the dog. So I guess Josh just assumed that he went there the first time. That's probably where he'll return this time. And so Josh wants to go to the cemetery
at like midnight. He has himself a big old halogen light, and he's ready to go. Tells Amanda to get dressed, and
I think Amanda's a little bit. She's reluctant, but she's also like, this house is creepy. So the outside world in the middle of the night and going to the cemetery can't be that much worse than this creepy old house.
Yeah, I mean, and also you don't want to leave your brother to go by himself.
Yep.
You don't want to split up. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yep, stick together. So they walk to the cemetery. It's a very quiet walk. It's a little too quiet out.
No crickets.
Nothing.
No birds.
Silence.
No nothing.
And in that silence, they can tell someone is following them.
They have the scraping of feet behind them.
And my blood ran cold.
Yeah, that was all right.
Just me?
Yeah, I think you're cold-blooded, buddy.
So they realized that it was Ray. So that kid from earlier had been following them. Ray says that he had trouble sleeping. He says that he's up walking in the middle of the night because he couldn't sleep. He said that he didn't tell his parents. So presumably his parents were like, okay, go ahead.
Well, Amanda said, oh, what do your parents think about this? And Ray was like, well, they don't know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so Ray's kind of a weirdo. We already knew that, but established by him walking around in the middle of the night. But they tell Ray that they're going to go to the cemetery, and Ray says, you can't do that.
Wait, quick thing, Justin. When you were younger, did you ever go for midnight walks or anything like that?
Yes, definitely. We would just run around the neighborhood, play Ghost in the Graveyard and stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
My parents wouldn't let us do that sort of nonsense.
We were supposed to be in when the streetlights came on, but would sometimes just not be back, or would go home for a while and go back out.
And sneak out?
Yeah, there was a little bit of sneaking.
All right.
Just a little bit of sneaking.
No, not to get you in trouble, but...
I think the statute of limitations has passed.
You're going to get
Hopefully.
spanking when someone hears this podcast?
A long time. Yeah. Don't send a link to my mom.
All right, we'll try not to. Send a link to his mom.
So Amanda and Josh are trying to go to the cemetery to find Petey. And Ray, again, is saying, you can't go to the cemetery. And he's being kind of Like he seems a little agitated.
Agitated, aggressive. This is not something you're allowed to do. You shouldn't do this.
Yeah. So at this point, I realized that I was really starting to speculate as to where is this story going. It was the first time that I remember thinking like, what brought these kids to this house? Who sent that letter? Is there something like at this point we've had enough to tell us that something's up, something's going on. The whole situation, like something just doesn't add up here. Something's out of sorts.
Yes.
So at this point, George, like, what did you have in mind as to where the story was going? Did you have a?
Well, the situation is I read the story previously,
Sure.
and it's one of those things that was kind of in the back of my mind that everything's not up to snuff. That things are kind of a setup and whatnot, and I kind of had the main like plot or punchline of the story just kind of buried under old memories and things like that.
Sure.
So I knew that things weren't going to go well. I knew that certain people were sinister. The issue was figuring out exactly who it was and trying to figure out who was on their side, who was not.
Got it. I think that it's at some point I was starting to wonder whether Amanda and Josh were going to survive the story.
Yeah.
Having not been too familiar with Goosebumps books, I was like, does R.L. Stine have the guts to kill these children?
R.L. Stine will kill a kid.
All right.
He will.
All right. Don't spoil it for me for future books, but I'm hoping that at some point like a main protagonist dies in a Goosebumps book. But if that happens, I will be actually like kind of surprised. But so anyways, they're on their way to the cemetery. They meet Ray. Ray says you can't go to the cemetery. He's very agitated. But they go to the cemetery anyway. Ray's not feeling good about that. At the cemetery, they find like an amphitheater that Ray says is for town meetings. So that was a little weird.
Yeah.
And they do find Petey in the cemetery. So their plan to find Petey, it worked out.
Great success.
But something's not quite right with Petey. Petey's like a zombie dog.
Well, they didn't say zombie dog. They just said he smelled like a horrible rat. A wet rat. He didn't respond to their calls and stuff like that. They didn't describe like any physical maladies with him. They just said he was acting strange, smelled really awful.
Yeah, but something like he was like had like lifeless eyes and was like not. So he didn't know who the kids were.
Yeah, wasn't responding to being called. He wasn't sitting. He was
sounded very zombie-ish to me.
Well,
exhibiting zombie-like behavior.
Well, I mean, zombie-like
not necessarily a zombie.
In my mind, zombie-like behavior is craving brains and chasing people. And he wasn't doing that. He was just being...
He seemed a little undead, but...
He seemed distant and aloof.
Anyways.
Like a normal teenager.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. So like a dog exhibiting teenage-like behavior.
Yes.
Which is also just as alarming as zombie-like behavior.
Yes, I guess. We agree on that, I guess.
So they're trying to, get the dog... but they're hanging out in this creepy cemetery, and as they're kind of walking around, they come across some graves, and they notice the names on the graves.
Yes,
are the names of some of the kids.
Yes,
from town,
particularly
Karen Somerset.
Karen Somerset. What was her date of death? What were the dates on there?
I don't know, but it was like fairly recent, right?
So what they said is like with the different dates on the graves, they noticed that. They said, maybe this is this person's grandmother, right. Maybe this is this person's father. But with the dates, it looked like it was from 1970 to 1982 or things like that, where they would be too young to have been Karen's grandfather or grandmother, things like that. So the dates coincide with the ages of the children that they were hanging out with.
Yep.
At this point, they, Karen, what's her name? Amanda, looked back at Ray. It's like, what's up with this? Yeah. She tripped and she actually found Ray's grave.
Finds Ray's grave as well.
Or something that appears to be Ray's grave. And she asks, is this your grave? And what does he say?
He's like, yeah.
Yeah.
That's mine.
Yeah, at this point.
I guess I'm dead.
Yeah. At this point is when you get out of Dodge. This is, you don't really stick around to ask more questions at this point. You get your brother, you find your parents, and you get out of there.
Do you take your dog, your zombie dog, or no?
You don't. They never said zombie dog.
At this point, Ray tells Amanda, I think, that Petey's dead. that
well,
she
not
had that they had to kill the dog first because dogs always know.
because dogs always know. It's a thing where
So
all
the
right,
dog is dead.
they just kind of gloss over the fact that they killed the dog, right?
Yeah,
So the dog is a dead dog.
dead dog.
So a little bit of a aside, there was something I was watching that says that animals like cats and dogs can see ghosts, right?
Yeah,
And basically the thing about that is that dogs they freak out, right? But that cats see ghosts all the time and they just don't care.
all
So
the
that's
time.
all the time and they
Right.
just don't care. That's why they're always staring off at things.
Ah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I kind of had the feeling that they knew.
Yeah.
They always know. Dogs, cats always know.
Yeah. Cats just don't care.
They just don't care. So there's a long conversation with Ray about what's going on in this town, and he reveals quite a bit about the situation.
Yes.
Significant exposition from Ray. The town is a town of dead people. Ray's
Mhm.
dead. All those other kids are dead.
Dead.
And
D-E-D, dead.
and the reason that he also tells Amanda that the reason that Amanda and Josh were invited to the town is because the town needs fresh blood.
Yes.
So the letter basically came from somebody in the town, luring this new family to Dark Falls to kill them because they needed fresh blood.
Probably the town's council on town renovation.
Yes.
Yeah, they probably have some sort of committee that they try to vet people and bring it in. But I'll let you finish.
Yep. So, well, it becomes clear that Ray is a part of this kind of plot to eventually kill the family. But Ray's role was to be the watcher,
Yes.
to make sure that they don't do anything crazy or get away or discover too much about the town too soon.
Now that's a little bit creepy. You have the ghost of a 12-year-old boy being a watcher in the room of a 12-year-old girl, making noise and giggling in the room all night long.
It's not great.
It's
not a great look for R.L. Stine.
that is a little bit. That's
It's a little weird.
That's a little bit weird.
It's a little weird.
I mean, you could maybe use a female watcher for the girl, male
Perhaps.
watcher for the guy, or whatnot, or just the whole watcher thing with children. That's
Right.
someone should go to jail.
Somebody should.
Yes.
And it should probably be, I'm just going to say it, Compton Dawes. Compton Dawes should go to jail.
Well, at this point, we don't know if he had a part of this.
So Ray is telling Amanda all of this stuff about what's going on in the town. And I think basically decides that he's got to take her out right there. So he tries to choke her. He's flying around.
He tries to fly around and force choke her.
Yeah.
At this point, yes.
So this doesn't sound like a traditional zombie by any means. These people are undead. There's definitely some elements of like vampire characteristics to the situation, I would say. Just based on the flying and like the powers.
Again, it's not
Powerful.
It's some sort of undead type of creature. Again, zombies and vampires are all their own tropes, but they have to come from somewhere. This is just saying, hey, this town, they're undead spirits or bodies or something like that, and they crave fresh blood.
That, again, sounds kind of vampire-ish.
It sounds vampiric, but then what happens?
Well, so while Ray is choking Amanda and flying around.
Force choking, mind you.
Force choking.
He does not lay hands
right.
on the girl.
That's right. Josh has his flashlight and points it at Ray, and Ray, like his skin starts melting off.
Gruesomely. Like he describes in gruesome detail, the skin sloughing off his face,
Yep.
seeing the skull meat underneath, and his eyeballs rolling out to the graveyard floor.
Fantastic imagery.
Fantastic imagery.
And then, then the skeleton falls to the ground. So basically, they killed Ray with a flashlight. And again, sensitivity to light. Again, I'm thinking vampire.
Pretty high
Vampiric.
sensitivity to light. I mean, yeah.
So Ray's dead. Amanda and Josh
DED
run
dead.
off. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, what are they going to tell their parents? The parents up to this point are just not having it. And now they've had this experience with Ray in the cemetery, and the kids are like completely freaking out. And mom and dad are just going to be like, ah.
They're standard spooky movie parents. They don't believe the children at all.
But they get home, and the parents are not there. Parents are gone.
It's around 2 a.m.
It's
at this
late,
time.
and parents should be home by then.
After 2 a.m.
Yep.
After 2 a.m.
But who is there, though? Some local kids. Karen's there at the house. Parents aren't home, but Karen's there, and a bunch of other kids who are now known to be perhaps dead or undead. And Amanda's like, Karen, I thought we were friends. but what's going on here?
I thought you were nice, Karen.
And Karen's like, no, I'm dead, actually.
It's like, I thought you were nice. Like, we all used to be nice.
Yep. And
Now we're spooky dead.
And she says that we're all dead. We sent you that letter about the house. You don't even have a great uncle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's a knock at the door. And the kids run off. And who's at the door, George?
That guy.
That guy.
That
exactly.
guy. That guy.
Compton Dawes.
Dawes.
And Compton Dawes is like, hey, you kids seem really upset. Do you want to go for a ride in my car?
No, not that bad. He was like, said that we need to find your parents. We need to get out of here. He wasn't being that super creaky.
He tries to get them into his car.
But again, at 2 a.m. in the morning, he comes to their house and takes a 12-year-old and 11-year-old into his car. Again, these children don't have the best sense for strangers.
That's right. But Compton Dawes says he and the kids' parents were at the party and they almost got attacked, but that they got away. Says he'll take the kids to see their parents. Doesn't tell them where their parents are, but says like they're safe, but I don't know for how long, and we got to go quickly.
Yeah, we definitely.
He's like, get in my car, and he says they're going to go back to the cemetery. So that's what they do. They get into his car. They're headed back to the cemetery. At this point, they obviously know something's up. They're suspicious of Compton Dawes, but they don't really know what side he's on. Josh still has his flashlight, and I'm thinking, Josh, just point the flashlight at Compton Dawes. This is a precautionary measure.
Exactly. You know?
At the cemetery, they get there. Josh sees Petey, the dog, the undead dog, and takes off after him. And then as he's trying to chase down Petey, he stumbles upon yet another grave, and it's the grave of Compton Dawes.
Compton Dawes made it very clear that his name was not a common name in his family.
Yep.
So
there's only one Compton Dawes, and he's dead, or he's undead. So now we know that Compton Dawes is on the wrong side of the line as well. So that's troubling. Compton Dawes then approaches the kids and provides some additional information about what's going on in the town. A little bit of backstory about the origin story of Dark Falls.
Yes.
So briefly, basically, there was an accident at a plastics factory. Yellow poison gas killed everyone in Dark Falls.
So basically, I think with plastics, people are like, "Oh, plastics, that's a new type of technology. We don't really quite know how it works, you know."
But it seems really safe.
It seems really safe. I mean, the thing is that if it was another time, it would be microwave. If it was another time, it would be radioactive, you know. But again, yellow gas to me sounds like some sort of sulfur gas escaping the factory, asphyxiating everybody or whatnot. But
so everyone in Dark Falls was killed by poison gas in an industrial accident. At this point, they know that Compton Dawes is dead, and they're a little freaked out. More than a little freaked out. They're very freaked out. And then Josh, it finally occurs to him to use the flashlight, but it won't turn on. It's like broken.
Yeah, he dropped it a little while earlier.
Yeah. So if you don't have a flashlight to kill the undead, what can you do? You just run. So the kids run. Compton Dawes follows after them.
Well,
there's a chase.
I think the thing is that they were... Amanda was kind of being, again, force choked another time by Compton Dawes.
Sure.
And, you know, Josh, you know, his flashlight wasn't working, so he threw it at Compton Dawes at this point and pretty much cracked his soft, squishy flesh open.
Yeah.
Cracked his skull open. Compton Dawes was hindered by holding his head together.
A little bit.
And
it always slows me down.
Yeah. Whenever you have a serious head injury.
Flashlight wounds.
Yeah. So one of the things I noticed, you know, they went back to the amphitheater. The amphitheater had this old tree hanging over it with roots that were very much exposed. And from the amphitheater, they could see their parents sitting tied up. One of the major issues that I saw, they said, you know, that the parents looked, the first thing they say, R.L. Stine describes the parents as looking uncomfortable and terrified.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That was kind of weird to me. Like that he said the first thing was that they were uncomfortable in the whole situation, you know? Yeah. Why do you think he might say uncomfortable first as opposed to just saying terrified?
I mean, they were tied up. When was the last time you were tied up, George? Did you find it comfortable?
I don't get tied up that often. I'm not familiar with
Not nearly often enough. Yeah.
I guess so. I mean, I mean, why would you need to describe it as being uncomfortable? Shouldn't that be understood? I
Yeah,
guess
perhaps.
like they were comfortably tied up and terrified.
Yeah. Well, I mean, does it make you like empathize for them?
No, it makes me wonder
No.
why they said they were uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, did they have to use a bathroom badly or something like that while they were
that's
tied up?
probably it.
That I can understand that.
That makes sense.
You know, so
So they find mom and dad at the amphitheater. Mom and dad are very uncomfortable.
very uncomfortable.
Compton Dawes is, I guess they kind of got away from him for the moment. So, but they see all of the townspeople who are all undead headed towards the amphitheater. Like there's a big crowd like congregating, headed towards the amphitheater,
Kind of floating and going towards the amphitheater.
In the meanwhile, meanwhile, they've been out all night at this point, and it's morning basically. Like the sun is starting to come out. It's getting lighter out, and it seems that that Compton Dawes particularly seemed to be uncomfortable. He was made uncomfortable by the light.
Yes.
By the rising sun. So it's a very shady town. So everybody's
literally
kind of hanging out in the shade. All the undead townspeople are hanging out in the shade, but the sun is out. It is morning, and the kids need a plan. And they know that Compton Dawes did not like light. They know that Ray particularly got melted by light.
Has severe allergic reaction to light.
To the flashlight. So the kids need a plan. The sun is up. Zombies hate the sun, and the amphitheater is in the shade. So
due to the huge tree.
Giant tree.
Yes.
A big old tree providing shade to the amphitheater. So they decide to try to knock over the tree and let the sunlight flood into the amphitheater. So they push the tree. They get to work pushing on the tree.
They push that tree with all their might. They run into the tree over and over again, causing a big old ruckus.
They do. And they push it and they push it and they push it. The tree doesn't move. It
move.
moves a little bit and then it kind of moves back. And eventually they give up and they slump down at the base of the tree. And then what happens? The tree falls over, actually.
Lo and behold, the tree.
So it doesn't
cracks.
fall over until it falls over.
Yes.
Sunlight pours into the amphitheater. A lot of zombies getting flooded with sunlight, and they start melting.
Yes.
And they're screaming.
Yes.
And they're dying.
Yes. Again, they never describe them as zombies. They don't give them a name. They don't give them a name. It's important that whatever they are unique to this universe. Zombies, when you say zombies, you speak about someone with the genre, with certain rules and things like that.
You're quite the stickler when it comes to monster terminology.
I am very much the stickler when it comes to terminology, because the terminology describes what you can expect.
Additional attributes
that you can expect and tropes. So
All right. And they're more like vampires anyway. So amid the chaos, Amanda sees Karen melting and screaming. You remember Karen Somerset?
It was the friendly one.
Karen
Died in 1988.
And then Karen, while amidst the screaming and the melting, she says to Amanda, "Thank you, Amanda."
With exclamation points. Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you.
And she says that right before her skin falls off and her eyes fall out.
Yeah, roll to the ground. So
I guess what that kind of does is it lets Amanda off the hook a little bit for any guilt she might have felt later on for having, massacred
a whole
hundreds of
people.
undead townspeople.
Well, I mean, you're right. I think it does take her off the hook.
Totally does.
Doesn't mean it lets you feel that they were unhappy being the way that they were, but they just couldn't really step outside of it.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
It would have been more interesting if they hadn't done that. Just the guilt of sort of like you and your family moved to a new town, you massacre the entire town. They had a lifestyle, wasn't a great lifestyle, but it was theirs.
Yeah.
But again, they did this so that people. I think you're right. So she doesn't feel bad for the horrible, horrible, horrible second deaths that she's giving these people.
Otherwise, it would have been kind of I Am Legend-ish. So you get the reference there because there was the situation where it's like, okay, these are I'm gonna say it, vampires.
They were I Am Legend. They were basically kind of like vampires.
Vampires, and they and there was like a vampire hunter in the movie played by Will Smith. But then he eventually, I believe, came to realize that it was wrong for him to be like killing these vampires because that was like the next level of evolution of humans. Anyways,
quick side note, that was actually the third movie that was based off the same book property.
Excellent side note.
Yes, I think the first one was Omega Man. I think one of them had Charlton Heston
Gotcha.
and X the Last Man or something like that.
Nice.
So, yes.
So, anyways, the Dead House universe is not like that at all.
No.
Amanda has apparently kind of given these people a peace by kind of killing them in their vampire form.
She gave them full release
and-
by allowing them to die.
and she was thanked repeatedly by Karen before her eyes fell out. So,
Before she
gotta
received
feel
full
good about
release.
that.
Yes.
And mom and dad are now they're fine. You know, they're all right.
Well, I mean, they got them untied and they were less uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable. They were comforted by being untied.
And
So
they got their stuff and they got out of there.
so they go back to the house. They pack up. They're ready to move back to their old house, which conveniently had they forgot to sell it or something.
Well, they didn't
So
forget to
they
sell. They
forgot-
just
I'm pretty
couldn't
sure
sell it on short notice. They want to get
Dad
to
was
the house
busy
that
with his
fast.
writing career,
Yeah.
and he forgot to sell the old house. So they pack up all their stuff. They're leaving. They're moving out. And Amanda sees a car pull into the driveway as she's like taking one last look at the creepy house that she's finally leaving. And this car pulls up, and a new family gets out of the car.
Yep.
And you know what are we supposed to make of that?
I mean, also
A
you
new
got
family has arrived.
Compton Dawes there. So a new family's showing up. Compton Dawes is showing them around. And does Amanda call out to the new family, or does she just get in the car and leave?
No, she pieces out.
She just gets to the car and leave.
Yeah.
And again, kind of selfish right there. It's like, doesn't even say, excuse me, don't do it.
Yep.
Doesn't give a single warning.
Yep. As she's leaving without giving the family any sort of information about all what she's just experienced, she thinks she sees Compton Dawes at the door. So, you
Yeah.
know, what are we to believe here? Compton Dawes perhaps is still alive and well.
I'm sure he's alive and well. It's a situation where he wasn't killed. He wasn't given the true death, as you might put it, if you're using vampire terms. But it's a situation where obviously not everyone got to a town meeting. Their council is still active and well.
Okay, so just to be clear, you don't. It's not that Compton Dawes was there and got blasted with sunlight and somehow reanimated himself through the power of Dark Falls. It's that he perhaps knew that somehow these meddling kids were gonna, kill all the townspeople, and he pieced out early to avoid the Dark Falls massacre.
Well, he was holding in his head meats, as we say.
That's right.
He got cracked in the skull with a halogen light bulb. Now, thinking 1992, a halogen light bulb was probably going to be about a foot long, and it's probably going to be using D-cell batteries and be made of some sort of metal. This thing was winged at his skull meat.
That's right.
Cracked open, you could see the white flesh underneath.
And the bone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was probably trying to tend to that, His stuff is barely holding together as it is, so he
Yeah.
probably had to go home on this one,
Okay, so he missed the Dark Falls massacre.
Yeah, he
He's
missed the
still-
Darkfall Massacre.
He's still a living dead dude. Has not had his full release.
He has not had his full release.
And you're saying presumably there are other people in Dark Falls who also avoided the massacre, and so the zombie vampires, as you called them, are still continue to haunt the town.
Yeah, I mean the thing is that, do you go to every town council meeting?
Everyone.
You go to every town council meeting.
Never miss a
All right.
meeting.
Well, I don't go to every town council meeting, and sometimes,
I mean, I would if there were sacrifices.
I guess so. That would make it more exciting.
Yeah.
But again, even things that you like to go to, like if there's like free food or something like that,
Yeah.
sometimes you miss it, right? Sometimes you're sick that
Occasionally.
day,
Yep.
and yeah, I'm assuming that, 4 people isn't going to be able to satiate a full town at once, right? I'm sure there are a few people who stayed home that day who,
What did they do with these people? They don't like eat them or anything, right?
well, they
kill them
They kill them
and somehow transform them into
into.
zombie vampires, as you called them.
So I didn't call them zombie vampires. I called them spooky dead.
Are there? What's the real estate situation in this town?
So the real
So once you die and become a zombie vampire, do you just move into a house, like an unoccupied house in town?
well,
Does Compton Dawes show you the house?
Well, yeah, they dig first. They dig you a grave, and then they put that there, and then you probably just hide in the grave during the day or something like that. I mean, it's a situation where Compton Dawes is obviously the liaison between the town and the outside world.
But does he also help the newly living dead find a home in Dark Falls?
That's probably someone else. I mean, because
Okay.
he'd be busy. I mean, I don't know if it's a one-person job going through finding someone gullible enough to take this deal.
How do you think they were identified?
Well, I was thinking about that earlier today, actually. It's a situation where he probably looked at,
An
again,
impulsive father has got to be one of the check marks that you need.
he probably, I mean, again, before the internet, but he probably maybe looked up like records, net worths and things like that. Look for people with jobs where they have flexibility in terms of where they live, writers, people who, probably had limited knowledge of their family. Probably people who've had family in the United States for quite some time.
Yeah.
Like if it was recently immigrated people to the United States, they probably would be sketchy about some New Deal or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's people who have been in the United States for quite some time. It's like, oh, I have a large family that I don't interact with. So there's probably could be a whole book written about the background of vetting these people.
And there should be.
There should be. That would be very interesting. Just writing a book about the background that has to happen in these sort of horror scenarios to make these things run.
Do you think that Josh and Amanda and her family are the first to have ever escaped from Dark Falls? Do you think that they will tell other people about what they saw there?
I don't think they're the first to escape. But
you'd think that Dad would write a book about it or something.
What was the dad's name again?
They never said.
Robert Louis Stine or something like that?
Maybe.
No. But you'd think so. But they probably have, again, for something this large to be able to work, they probably have some damage control. I mean, Amanda and her family are probably going to get out of the town and get to, their old house.
You need to have a good PR team.
Well, it's not even a PR team. I think that one night, Amanda and her family are going to be sleeping in their beds, and suddenly they're not going to be sleeping anymore.
And their blood will run cold.
Yeah, and their blood will run cold. Uh-huh. Yes. I think that's the only logical conclusion, unless they actually get some sort of protection.
And there isn't a sequel to this book, is there? I haven't looked.
I don't know. I don't believe there was. This again was The Dead House by R.L. Stine.
Book one.
One of your Scholastic readers that you could probably buy at the Scholastic book
Scholastic
sale.
store. Yep.
Scholastic store, yes. But the thing is that I don't think there was a sequel to this one. I would love to see an adult sequel to this. I've not looked at. Have you ever looked on Reddit to see if there's R.L. Stine fan fiction?
No.
There were follow-ups from the
That would
books?
be really funny.
That'd be really
All right.
interesting.
Yeah.
That'd be really interesting. A few more notes from this book. Again, sometimes when reading these things, they introduce you to new concepts. I remember distinctly when I read this book in the first, first or second chapter, they talk about how Amanda had a walk-in closet. I remember having to go to my parents or my teacher and say, "What is a walk-in closet?" And they're like, "It's a walk-in closet. It's a closet that you walk into."
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean? It's it's big enough to walk into. It's oh, so it's like a little room that's you put your clothes in. It's yes.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's neat.
Yeah.
Do
you have a walk-in closet now?
Have
you ever had a walk-in closet?
I have had a walk-in closet.
Nice.
That was nice.
Living the life.
It was nice. Basically, it lets you keep your room clean. Just push everything that's messy into the closet.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in terms of the book, let's maybe wrap up and just recap the whole story. Basically, in 3 sentences: family gets spooky letter, moves to spooky town. Town is spooky. They turn out to be unspooky dead. They want to consume them to further their unspooky dead agenda.
Yeah.
They get killed by light. Family escapes.
Yeah, and since they didn't kill them, it's they needed fresh blood, right? What's going to happen to the town without that influx of fresh blood? I know they got another family coming, but seems like they're going to be really hungry for a while.
I think it's going to
be...
And
I feel bad for them.
I think they have a situation set up where they're able to survive. I mean, this definitely wasn't their first rodeo. They've been doing this for over 20 years.
Since the accident, yeah.
Yeah, the 1970s, I think the accident was. So they've been doing it for quite some time. They probably have some reserves. I wouldn't be surprised if there are several dead houses within the neighborhood that
That's
they
smart.
operate
That
at
would be
time.
smart.
You
That
know?
would be smart. So that's why Common Dawes is so busy.
Yeah.
He's got a bunch of dead houses
Yeah, I mean, like, again,
that he's working on.
he works on them,
That's smart.
probably does one family at a time, but he has the other ones ready to go, right?
Yep.
I think it was a mistake to bring the family into one while the other one's still leaving. But, he wants them in lickety split,
Yep. Makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Overall, yeah, a little bit spooky.
Overall, I mean,
My blood ran cold 5 or 6 times.
Yeah, 5 or 6 times for his blood run cold. There were at least 10
Tropes.
alerts.
Yep.
I think
High trope count.
hard trope count. I really do think that at this point, a adult follow up to that, just with the mechanisms of what was going on behind the scenes, would be a really interesting story to read or at least tell.
Agreed. So if any of our listeners want to write that, we'd be happy to read it.
We would read it
and pod about it.
You could leave your stories or links to your stories in the description in the
comments.
In the comments. Feel free to like and subscribe us on SoundCloud.
That's right.
This is the unnamed podcast as of right now still. And do you have anything you need to say?
No. I got nothing.
You got nothing?
That's it. Good
All right.
times.
Good
Fun.
times.
Fun
Let us know
stuff.
what you think.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Peace out.